Good morning, everyone. I hope your quiz went well. Today, we're going to spend a majority of the time watching The Wizard of Oz. Remember, it's a commentary on the Gilded Age. And as we watch The Wizard of Oz, I want you to be thinking of who the characters in the movie represented. Before we get to that part of our class today, we have to discuss and take a few notes on another group of people that wanted to see changes in our United States. These people tended to live in cities, but not necessarily, and they were called the Progressives. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at who the Progressives were, and then secondly, we'll look at what did the Progressives want. Who exactly were these progressives and what did they believe? The progressives believed several things. One, many progressives believed that the idea of laissez-faire was no longer useful in the United States. They felt it had become obsolete. If you recall, laissez-faire is a philosophy, it's a belief in which a person believes that the government should not play a role in economic matters. And with the Second Industrial Revolution and the changes that were taking place in the rural areas with farming and in what was happening in cities, many people believe that concept no longer should be practiced. Another thing some progressives believed is they believed that businesses that had formed monopolies and government at either the city level, the state level, or the national level should not be able to abuse their power. A third thing some progressives believed was that we could become a better country, that what was taking place in our country, we were not reaching our potential as a society. And many of these progressives believed that we could become a better country. Other progressives believed that we should take the principles that we had learned in science, in the natural sciences, and apply them to our culture, apply them to the social sciences. Finally, and maybe the most important idea of the progressives, was that this force of change, this wave of change that they believed needed to take place in the United States, they believed that the government, either at the state level or the local level or the national level, should become the driving force behind making these changes. Many people refer to Barack Obama as a progressive, and he's never declined or said he is not. He feels he is a progressive. He has that mindset that we can become a better country and that the government should be the driving force behind those changes. Now, the one thing you need to realize about these beliefs of the progressives is you didn't have to believe in all 5 ideas here to be a progressive. You could believe in 2, 3, 4, maybe even just one of those beliefs to be considered a progressive. With that in mind, different people had different ideas of what needed to change in our country. You didn't have to believe in all these desired changes. You could maybe just focus on one of them, believe in one of them. But when it came to government, progressives targeted several things. One, they targeted political parties. They believed that the power of the political parties was in the hands of too few people, like the leaders of the political parties. And the progressives, just like the populists, believed that the power should be in the hands of the people. With that in mind, Progressives push for the idea of direct primaries. And a direct primary is when you and I, the voters, either Democrat or Republican, we choose the candidates that will run for office. During this time period, the political party leaders chose who the candidates should be. So they pushed for direct primaries. Another target the progressives had in government is that they felt too many cities had come under the control of various political machines or political bosses. And they realized the corruption that was usually involved in political machines, and they wanted cities to reform. So they pushed for things such as city commissions, where there would not be one single city executive. Instead, the elected board or the elected council, they would all serve as executives. They would all serve maybe one area, like a commissioner for the police department, or a commissioner for the fire department, or a commissioner for the streets, or a commissioner for the parks. If you like Batman, Commissioner Gordon, Gotham City was a commission type of government, where each person on the legislative board or the city board also was in charge of an executive department. They also pushed for the idea of city managers. City managers were professionals that would run the city. In other words, they would be unofficially a mayor. A city would still have a mayor for the ceremonial purposes, and people would still elect a mayor, but when it came to running the day-to-day operations of a city, the city council would hire a professional, a city manager. Also, they push for initiatives. We're not going to spend too much time on this because we looked at this last time when we looked at the populist movement. But the idea of initiatives is the idea that people, you and I, through the petition process, should be able to pass laws, pass state laws, since if we didn't feel the legislature was acting on them. The progressives were not only interested in government issues. They were also interested in social issues. For sake of time, we're not going to look at all the social issues they were interested in. We're just going to look at some of the social issues they were interested in. You've already read in Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 all the social issues that they were interested in. Some progressives were interested in alcohol consumption. They felt that alcohol abuse had become pretty rampant in the United States. And there were some progressives, and again, I'll stress some because you don't have to believe in all these things, but there were some progressives that felt that the United States needed to limit or to eliminate the consumption of alcohol. There were two main progressive groups that believed in this. One group was called the Anti-Saloon League, and the other group was called the WCTU, or the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And what these two groups did is these two groups focused upon the negative effects of alcohol consumption in the United States. They brought it to the public's attention. Now, the anti-drinking establishment did have success in getting Congress to pass some laws that dealt with alcohol consumption. One of those laws was the Webb-Kenyon Act of 1913, which made it illegal to transport alcohol into dry states. A dry state is a state that does not allow alcohol consumption. Again, these are national laws that Congress passed. They also passed the Volstead Act of 1919, and in the Volstead Act they had to give a definition to what liquor exactly was. So they defined liquor as any beverage with more than 0.5% alcohol. The progressives were also able to get a supermajority of people in the House and the Senate, and a supermajority of states, 3/4, to agree to the 18th Amendment. Now, the 18th Amendment's interesting. It did not make the drinking of alcohol unconstitutional. It didn't need to. See, because what it did is it made illegal the manufacture, the sale, and the transportation of alcoholic beverages. So once all the alcohol had been consumed in the United States, according to the 18th Amendment, no new alcohol could be produced. Now, there were some exceptions to this that we really don't have time to look at, but there were some exceptions to this. But this is also going to be the time period of bootlegging, and when organized crime is going to become very involved in the sale of alcohol during this time. But again, alcohol wasn't the only social issue progressives were concerned about. Some progressives were interested in immigration restriction. We've already looked at immigration restriction, but I need you to know that it was an area of concern for some progressives. Again, the progressives are going to push for literacy tests. And then another social issue that some progressives are going to be concerned about is prostitution. And Congress passed the White Slave Traffic Act. Now, this act is still in the books today. It's still enforced. But the White Slave Traffic Act, or the Mann Act, basically made the movement of women or children from across state lines for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery illegal. And then finally, I'm sorry I didn't finish spelling out the word here, but one of the other social movements some progressives were involved in was a woman's right to vote. A fancy word for that is suffrage. So the women's suffrage movement was also taking place at this time. Some women went as far as using militant tactics to get their point across. Now, finally, women gained the right to vote in the 19th Amendment. When Congress and the House and the Senate and the supermajority of states approved of the 19th Amendment, it gave women the right to vote. Now again, we only looked at some of the issues that progressives were interested in. There was many, many more. But remember, a progressive is someone who basically feels we could be a better country. And they also believe that the driving force behind this improvement needed to be the government, either at the local, the state, or the national level. So go ahead and get ready, and who's ever filling in for me will get Wizard of Oz showing for you. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Gentlemen that play football, good luck in your football game today, and everyone just be careful driving this afternoon.